This is episode 42 of the Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast. I'm Carly Kade, and today I'm talking with Valerie Ormond. Valerie retired after a 25-year career as a naval intelligence officer and began her second career as a writer. She founded her own business, Veteran Writing Services, LLC, providing companies and organizations professional writing, editing, and consulting services. Valerie's novels, Believing in Horses and Believing in Horses 2, won gold medals in the Military Writers Society of America Book Awards and 5 other first-place awards in national and international competitions, including Best Veterans Fiction at the 2019 Equus Film and Arts Festival. Her nonfiction stories have been published in 7 books, and her articles have appeared worldwide in magazines, newspapers, and blogs. Valerie has been a horse lover her whole life. She and her husband own and ride their 3 horses, Lucky, Billy, and Chance, in multiple disciplines. They live in Bowie, Maryland, on their small farmette with their 2 fun-loving dogs. Now, let's get into the interview. Welcome to the Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast, a podcast featuring interviews with equestrian authors who love all things horses and writing about them. In each episode, you'll hear inspirational stories from horsebook authors, including writing advice and marketing tips to help you write your very own horsebook. If you're an author, aspire to be an author, or simply love horsebooks, then you are in the right place. I'm your host, Carly Kade, and creative writing makes my spurs jingle. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast. I'm Carly Kade, and today I am so excited to have Valerie Ormond as my guest. Hi, Valerie. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Carly. It's great to be here. Thank you.
I am so excited to have you. It's been a minute since we've seen each other. I think we saw each other a few years ago at the American Horse Publications Conference, but it's been a minute.
Right. Here in Maryland. So last year I got kicked off of 3 flights for weather, and there's just a point where you realize that maybe you're just not supposed to go. So sorry I missed you all. I saw you had a great time in the whole author situation. So
yeah, we did miss you last year, and we had a great author meetup at the event, and hopefully we'll be doing that again at the next conference. And we missed you very much. So this is a great opportunity to reconnect and talk about what you're up to. And I always really like kicking off these interviews with the time-old question: how did your love affair with horses begin, Valerie?
my brother was a school teacher, so he told me to always have props ready, right? So here we go. This is a picture. I know you can't see it very well, but it is of me and my brother. Of course, my brother's in front at the Cherry Blossom Festival here in Washington, D.C. So we went, as people usually do around here at that time of year, and there was this big, beautiful bay horse. It was a police horse, and at 3 years old, somehow I knew the word horsey, horsey, and I pointed at it, and that sweet police officer scooped me up and put me on his horse. Of course, they'd never do that today, right? Probably would be break all kinds of legal rules. But it's funny because I say that's what started it because it's what I remember. But if you walk it back, somehow I had to know what a horse was in order to say that. So I think it's just been something that's always been there.
Oh yeah, and that is how it is for a lot of us, and a lot of the other authors I've been interviewing. It's just like we're born with this special gene or something that makes us just love horses. And so you fell in love at an early age, and you had that awesome experience of a policeman picking you up and putting you on the back of the horse. And then how did your love affair continue? Do you have horses in your life now, or where did that take you after that memorable moment?
Well, my grandmother, for some reason, she had a real thing for horses too. And so my parents knew that I wanted a pony. I kept asking for a pony, but my grandmother got me riding lessons. And it's funny because it moved all over the world. And right now I live probably 5 miles from where I had my very first riding lessons up the road here. I rode a horse named Uncle Bill. It was a little pony, a little paint pony, and had my first horse show, and I won a blue ribbon. And we continued, and I grew up here in Bowie, Maryland, where it's very much horse country. There's 3 racetracks around here, and a lot of us grew up riding those off-the-track horses, thoroughbreds, before that was really a thing. But always managed to take try to take a lesson here or there, or ride wherever I could, clean stalls and be able to hop on somebody's horse. And then eventually leased my first horse when I was 14, and then went away to college and rode throughout my life here and there. And then right after 9/11, I actually said, okay, I'm not putting off having my own horse any longer. So, every day could be your last. And so I bought a horse, and then, kind of like potato chips, got a second one, and then that actually became my husband's horse. And so I had my first pony, my 27-year-old now, he was 10 at the time, pony. Then I bought my husband this quarter horse, a racing quarter horse, Billy. Mine's name's Chance, Billy. And then when I retired from the Navy, I decided I wanted a project horse that I would start for my own. And that's Lucky. And he's the horse in my books.
Oh, which is perfect segue, because I was going to talk about that. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
you are a retired naval intelligence officer. Thank you for your service,
Thank you.
Valerie. And now you write books and stories sharing your lessons learned, basically. So talk to us about your books. Tell us about Believing in Horses and Believing in Horses Too, where these book babies bubbled up from.
Well, this is Believing in Horses. That is Lucky on the cover.
Oh.
So that story came to me in the middle of the night. No kidding. I when I went to go look at this horse, Lucky, to purchase him, I said to the woman who owned him, her daughter was getting very sad that he was leaving. Even though she had never ridden him, nobody had ridden him. She just had this certain connection to that horse. And so she was in her room crying, and her mother found her the day they were shipping Lucky away. And I told her, I said, well, just tell her Lucky's going to go off and do something very important in Washington, D.C., like go be a senator. And she just, and she said to me, that'd make a really cute idea for a children's book. So I had never thought about writing a children's book, but it must have just gotten in my data bank somewhere to write a book, because I woke up 3 o'clock in the morning one day and I had this whole idea for a book. When I retired, I wanted to help rescues and was very interested in the unwanted horse population. And so I thought about it, and I said, if I could write a book that puts a spotlight on that situation, but also I could share some of my lessons learned through my life, both as a horse person, but also in the Navy and the military, and talk about a family in the military. Perhaps that I could reach a wider audience of people to help, and put a spotlight on the rescues themselves and the volunteers and how hard they work.
Mm-hmm.
That I could reach a lot more people than if I just went and helped at one little tiny rescue here in Maryland. So, and that's what I did.
And it's incredible. And I see over your shoulder there in the background, you have won multiple awards for your books, and then you do have some other books that you've written too.
Right. So this one is Believing in Horses 2, and this story really, I only intended to write one, but when I was writing it, I wanted to include horse equine therapy in the book, and we all know about page counts and that kind of thing. And the first book was already kind of long enough. So I said, well, I guess I'll put this in a whole second book. And I did. And this one, her dad is still in Afghanistan. And something had happened at the end of the first book that made her really start worrying about her dad. So she's worried about his safety and whether he's going to get injured or maybe even worse. And she realizes she needs to do something to distract her from those fears. So she decides she's going to show at the biggest horse show around here in Maryland, this new horse that she's, young horse. And we all know what it's like to show a young horse, but she's determined and she's going to do it. And she's going to make her father proud. And then she finds out, when she goes to check on one of the horses she rescued in the first book, about equine therapy. And she says, wow, this is really, really interesting. I want to do this too. I want to get as distracted as I can be. And turns out that she does get involved, but both of those things challenge her even more and kind of make her believe in who she is and become the person she wants to be. And some of these other books, a variety of stories that I've written for other books. One of them is called 5 Must-Know Secrets for Every College Girl, for Today's College Girl. And this is a book about kind of arming young girls leaving high school don't forget your soul, don't forget your this, don't forget, don't, all the things that you need to hold on to, even as you're maturing in that, kind of awkward stage for a lot. And so I wrote a story that had to do with the Navy
Mhm.
for that book. It was a got a request for input, and I answered the query and talked to this woman back and forth. Her name is Laura Salamone, and it was a wonderful experience. And the others are mostly military stories about my family or horse stories. One of them was so excited it actually made the cover of a magazine here downtown Annapolis, and it's about the Naval Academy midshipmen. We used to help them back at the barn where we are, and they had an equestrian team, and it was one of the first times they ever had an equestrian team, and they were at this big horse show, and so it was all about them. But I was so excited I got on the cover. And then I wrote a story in Sidelines magazine, and that's for those of you out there who don't know what Sidelines is an absolutely beautiful, beautiful magazine. Great stories about people. They call it the People Magazine of horses, and it was about. And this is the reason why I'm talking about it. It is about the young girl who kicked off the Believing in Horses story, about the
Oh,
Luckies, the woman who bred her, the daughter, and how we kept in touch over the years. And she came here to visit us. We brought her to the Naval Academy, and she decided she wanted to go to the Naval Academy. And
great.
so she's now she ended up going to the Air Force Academy instead. And she's now in her third year,
Oh
and
my
she's doing
goodness.
very well. And she's probably going to be a pilot. So it's just, it's I love the
You
story.
touched her life. That is so,
Yeah.
like, special, and it sounds like you're really you focus your work around young women and
Hmm.
reminding them of who they are. I wanted to ask, is that article, in that you wrote for Sidelines, is that available digitally so I can link to it in the show notes so people can get.
Sure. Yes, I'll send it to you after the show.
Oh,
And
that's perfect.
and again, how we're all connected here. I actually sold that story during that AHP conference where we met.
Oh, that's lovely. Okay, so since you've plugged the American Horse Publications, which is where we first began our
Yeah.
relationship, which has continued on for several years, can you just like share a little snippet, because you're also a freelance, you're an author of books, but you're also a freelance writer and you write articles
Right.
for the media. Can you
Right.
explain what the AHP has done for you in your career and a little bit about what it does and how it works?
AHP, first of all, I'm not on the board or anything. So when I'm giving this marketing pitch about them, it's not because of that. I walked into AHP, and I think 2010, right after my first book came out, and I was welcomed with such open arms
Mhm.
that I was amazed, and I went there because I had just written this book. I didn't really know marketing is not my thing. That topic will continue to come up, and but I people there, I just learned so much from them and got some very good tips and some really good advice. And when I go to their conferences every year, they have great workshops. I don't know if you've been to any of like Jackie Berezinski's,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
really learning some wonderful tips for any writer, no matter what kind of writing you do, to
Mhm.
make you a better writer, and connections and learning things and learning more about what's going on in the horse world. And so it also has a feature called the newsfeed, the AHP newsfeed, and so I use that regularly. Every time I put a press release on there, something has come out of it, whether
Mhm.
it be somebody asking for an interview, or they review my book, or just something. And one of them is recently that I sent in was about myself and Robin Hutton, the author of Sergeant Reckless. And we were doing there was more of us, but we were doing a veterans writing workshop in Albuquerque as part of the Military Writers Society of America conference. And that Horse Nation picked that up and gave us a standing ovation. They do that every week. They pick somebody, and that went out to, they have 30,000 readers daily.
Wow.
So
Wow.
it's just, I can't say enough. And I've met great people like you, and all these other horse book authors and writers and magazine people, and just so many forms of media. So
Mhm.
it's really nice to have a connection with. I have connections with a lot of horse people, and I have connections to a lot of writers, but
Mhm.
something about when you put horse people and writing together, it's a
Mhm.
great combination. And business. That's the other
Mhm.
thing, is a lot of them are very business oriented, and we're all trying to figure out and learn from each other, and how do you make this happen, and what's the best way to do this, and
Mhm.
everybody's really willing to share. So,
Mhm.
which is
Yeah,
not always the case in business.
that is right. It is a very, very cool, supportive, amazing group of people. They have speed networking opportunities too for
Hmm.
freelancers to be able to pitch story ideas to
Right.
major publications. So this is
Hmm.
the place where everyone writing about horses is engaging, right?
Right.
So
And that's where I ended up speaking to the editor of Sidelines during one of those speed networking
yeah,
sessions, and so
yeah.
yeah, it was
It's a great community and a great place
hmm
to get your work out there and share
hmm
your
hmm
news of what you're up to, but then also learn what's going on
yeah,
across the industry because we often get
right,
segmented into our disciplines or our breed of
right,
choice, and
hmm
this covers the gamut, which is very cool.
yes,
So thank you. We just did a little piece for the American Horse Publications, but I back it too. I'm not
yes,
on the board, but I've gotten tremendous value out of being a member, and I've
yeah,
created great friendships, just
hmm
like what we're doing here.
yeah, right,
So I wanted to go back to your Believe in Horses and Believe in Horses too, and I wanted to talk a little bit. I mean, it's such a powerful piece of work, and I wanted to ask you: is there a particular message you hope your readers will take away from those books after they have finished reading them?
yes, it is. They are personal, and uh, I had one friend read it and say, "Well, I really loved your autobiography." She said it jokingly, but you can't help it to have some things that you think and you feel come through in your work.
Hmm.
But I wanted to share the military experience, and particularly some of the things like kids moving all the time. People
Mm.
don't understand what that's like. If you haven't moved and moved and moved, and again, I didn't move as a kid, even though my dad was in the Navy. He was in the reserves by that time, and so we didn't move. But I did move as a person in the Navy,
Mm.
and just starting over every couple years, all new friends, all new this, on it, and it's not easy, but it's really hard on kids because they
Mm.
get there. We have many friends, but when you're 8, you have only had so many friends. So when you have to leave your best friend, and starting in new schools and having to deal with new kids, and so I wanted to really share that, and I thought it was interesting because I used to do a lot of school visits, and I'd say, "Okay, how many in here have moved?" Some classrooms I'd go in, not a kid would put up their hand, so they
Mm.
just didn't really identify. And I've had some kids say to me, "Boy, I really didn't understand that." And the next time a new kid comes in, I'm going to be, I'll be a little nicer instead of looking at them like some kind of oddity. But also, the point is, I really wanted people to believe in themselves and believe in what they can do,
Mm.
because my young character, she's put up against, trying to save these 10 horses that she finds at an auction. It's a pretty difficult situation, and how is she going to do this? She's 12 years old. She doesn't have the money to do it, but trying going to the right people and figuring things out and working with people, and believing in yourself when you go and commit to a cause. And even though both books have the same theme, they're about believing in yourself. They are
Mm.
slightly different. There's different things that happen. There are different challenges that she faces, and I don't think, maybe every kid isn't going to try to save 10 horses. Maybe every kid isn't going to want to volunteer for equine therapy and be faced with challenges. But everybody faces challenges. So, how we deal with those challenges is what determines the outcome.
Mm.
So,
I love
that's
that.
yeah, that's so I think everybody can identify with these. I've had a lot of non-horse people read these books, and they say, "Wow, that's interesting. I learned something about horses, but I also learned something about some other things too." So,
Yeah, that's right. It sounds like I was just going to ask you who you think the audience for your book is, because it sounds like it can really touch a whole lot of different people, like families in the military,
mhm,
adults, younger people that are dealing with moves and challenges, horse lovers. So what would
right.
you say would be like the ideal reader, for your books?
Well, I wrote this as a middle grade.
Mm.
That's what I thought.
Mhm.
Maybe fifth, sixth, fourth, fifth, sixth grade. My publisher marketed it as and published it as a young adult
Mm.
novel. So they, because of the length and this and that and some of the the wording and the language and that kind of thing. Although it's tested at about a six point something grade level,
Mhm.
So that's the audience I was targeting, but I've found that I probably, and I've heard some of your other guests say this too, there's probably been more adults that have read it than anyone else. And to me, a very interesting demographic has been men, that like dads of horse girls, and they'll say, "Well, I just wanted to read it, to make sure." I said, "What?" And these are people I know. You think I would write something bad in a kid's book? but but no, adults read it too, because also I think sometimes we all like to escape. That's back to the young adult days. I mean, that's one of the reasons I like reading that genre, is because
Mhm.
it's takes us back. So, and another group that I've found has been very open, very welcoming, and is grandmothers.
Oh, yeah.
So they lots of grandmothers, people of the grandmother age, most of them, we still kind of enjoy the idea of having a signed book, like a signed book to a person, and they think that's very special. And so many of the granddaughters learn to ride, and so they are,
Mm,
or they love horses, and so, and they are so generous with their kind comments about
mm.
because they like the message. They really
Mhm.
like the message, and I've had quite a few that just hound me. When is your next book coming out? So
Oh, that's a good problem to have. I mean,
it is.
we
It's
write
very
for we
nice.
write for our readers, and it sounds like you're touching a whole lot of different readers, which is really fabulous, and because you have
Yeah,
such a powerful message, so it's
yeah,
it's great to hear it's getting out there.
yeah.
So, you mentioned you do school events where you go in and talk to
Right.
people at schools.
I
What other
do.
ways do you find have worked for you to reach your readers?
Well, the events like this is a great way to reach readers, and also to learn from other people. I've watched so many of your podcasts. My bookshelf is growing exponentially.
Thank you for tuning in.
Oh, it's so fun. And a lot of these people, I've known who they are for
Mhm.
years. I've actually know some of them for years, and I've heard them say things that I never knew about them. But
Oh,
it's just
cool.
one. It's a great way to get out there. And they say the more times you have things said, the better it is. So events like this, and my personal connections, I think, is has really been what I mentioned, the grandmothers, right? Well, my
Yeah.
mother teaches at a senior center. My mother, 84 years old, still works.
Mm.
She's an art teacher. She teaches at 3 local senior centers. And she's very, very proud mother, and she tells everybody about my books, and she tells everybody everywhere about my books. And so it's wonderful to have that kind of support. My husband, you've met my husband.
Mhm.
He's one of the
Lovely.
most social people on the planet. And so we meet people everywhere. We've met people on planes. They'll say, "Hey, do you have a book?" So, but it's really helpful when you have people like that who help, support you, and local media. My
Mm.
local media have been so wonderful to me here.
Mhm.
They every time I get an award or something, they do something about it. I tell them, send them a press release, or they'll do an interview with me, they'll do a story. They've just been, and I say that because I think a lot of people spend a lot of time trying to chase down, sending press releases or whatever, or trying to get interviews with the Washington Post or whatever.
Mhm.
And some people, yes, that'll work, but really the people who will take care of you are your local media, and particularly if we take care of them. I always thank them, always go back and say thank you very much, I appreciated it. In a interesting story about this local connections thing, I met a local senator a few years back here in Maryland. He did a tour for us for the Maryland Horse Council in the state capitol, and he just did such a wonderful job. And he talked to there was two young ladies in our group. They were probably 10, 12. One of them at the time was Wooge Fulton. She's become a very big eventer now. I mean,
Oh.
very big, like Berkeley and Rolex, and so she was little at the time. And so he took her and put her behind the other sister behind his chair in his office, and he was just so great to them. And so I wrote an editorial for the Annapolis Gazette, and said it was how in Maryland it's so nice that we can actually reach out and touch our legislators, and that they're real people. And so he ends up, his office contacted me, and the next thing I know, he has bought a copy of each of my books for every school in his district
Oh my
in
goodness, that's
Annapolis, yes,
amazing.
every public school. And because of that, then there was a lot of this a couple of these teachers or librarians, contacted me, and I had more school visits, and then he invited me to the Capitol and recognized me on the floor of the Capitol, and so there's again more news coverage for that kind of thing. And it was he picked my book for the National Education Association's Read Across America Day. It's the biggest reading day for kids, but
Wow.
both books. So and I ended up I loved his real character so much that he's a character in my second book.
Oh,
And so our relationship continues. As a matter of fact, he just bought a bunch of books for Read Across America this year again. So
that's incredible. See,
yeah,
don't ever underestimate the power of one person. It's like you mentioned
right.
a lot of really cool things. You mentioned word of mouth. You mentioned that your husband will talk to anybody, anywhere on airplanes, but you never,
Yeah.
and then, you recognized the senator and look at what just one little thing, you never know what it's going to
Hmm.
be can create. I mean, you could
Right.
be buying a lot of your books. That's amazing.
I would also talk to, advise other authors out there, maybe that to see if they feel like maybe they're not reaching um, everybody they want to reach, to maybe think about some of those educational pieces or folks that, because the more kids we can expose to books, horses, that's the better. And a lot of kids, that's really the only exposure they're going to get to horses. So
Mm,
it's through words. So if we can do that, that's a great mission for us, Authors United, right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
So because you have experience working with the local media, I want to, I think for aspiring authors or current authors that may not be working with their local media yet or have been nervous maybe to reach out, what would be, a few pointers that you would share with authors looking to connect with local media? And I agree with you. Local media can be very
Have
powerful.
a very well written press release.
Mhm.
Don't make them have to guess about anything.
Mhm.
And when you're sending a query, if you can send a query, some of them just do it with really a form these days.
Mhm.
Make it so that they really only have to read 2 sentences and make a decision.
Mhm.
Don't start with the catchy sales stuff and whatever. They don't have time for that, and they're not going to read it. Be available, and be if they want to do something and you have to rearrange your schedule, if you at all can, then you do that. And also, as just have a relationship that,
Mhm.
again, like I said, follow up. And then the other thing is, for instance, I had another relationship with another local journalist here that I used to help him too. So I would know things that were happening, let's say it had to do with Bowie Racetrack, that he doesn't follow it the way I do.
Mhm.
But I knew it was something, it wasn't like I had insider information or anything. It's just information that I knew from my meetings and things that I thought he may be interested in,
Mhm.
but not have been as in the weeds as I was on it. So I'd pick up the phone or I'd send him an email and say, hey, just want to. So it is a little, it just can't be one way. It
Mhm.
can't all be about us. We need to make and keep those relationships. And as I said, always follow up and thank them.
And yes, the thank you card is not
Mhm.
dead, or the thank you email is not dead.
Mhm.
And I think also, I mean, what I really got that you're saying is build a relationship.
Mhm.
It sometimes it takes a minute to build
Right.
relationships and share things with them that's not, it's not, it's for them. Share
Right.
things that will
Right.
help them in their careers, and then also, do you recommend pulling like an angle of which will help them figure out how to write their story when writing your press release?
Yes. Yeah. For instance, if I have I'll just give an example. If I won an award, right, and I want to send it to my local media and I want to send it to somewhere else, I'll rewrite that 4 times for 4 different audiences. So,
Mm,
well, my one for Bowie, I'll say local Bowie author, blah, blah, blah. She went to Bowie High School, lives in Bowie. I'd send it to AHP. I'd say horse author wins top military writing award, whatever.
mhm,
It's,
mhm,
just you have to kind of tailor it because again, they are looking for something. Why would they're thinking about their readers? Why
mhm.
would my readers care about this?
Exactly.
Remember, newspapers and magazines sell ad space.
Mhm, mhm,
So if you're trying to just get a free ad by writing a this is all about me piece, they are less inclined to want to do that. So it
Mhm.
has to be for their readers.
That's great. Well, thank you for sharing that. I think that'll be very, very useful for other authors listening in, or
Hmm.
how to
Hmm.
work with the media. And then there's lots of tips online too where you can look it up. But
Sure.
do your research on how to best do these different practices
Hmm.
before you do it. Right? It's
Right.
very important. And you mentioned that you're with a traditional publisher. Can you tell us a little bit
Right.
about how you found your publisher and what it's been like working with them? Like
Yes.
how did that magic
Yeah.
happen?
I'm with a very small press out of Canada.
Mhm.
And I was just pure luck at the time. I reached out. I saw a horse book and looked up the publisher. And somebody had told me, a woman who had published a bunch of children's books said, look for a publisher who publishes the kind of books that you write,
Mhm. That's a great
which
tip.
it seemed like it made a lot of sense. But as a brand new author, I hadn't even thought about that. So I did, and I thought first of all I thought about children's books, and I looked at all that, and I said, "Oh man, there's a lot of those." And I said, "What about horse books?" And so I ended up reaching out to this particular publisher and saying, "Look, I'm brand new in the business, and I really don't know, but I've written this book, and are can you give me any tips?" And fortunately, the president of the company got back to me and said, "We're not taking on anybody else right now." He said, "But hey, I was a young author too, and I'm still a young author." He said, I'll be glad to take a look at your manuscript for you and tell you if give you any kind of tips or ideas I have." I said, "Wow, okay, great, thanks." So I sent it off to him. A week later, he wrote me back. He said, "We want your book."
Oh my gosh, that's like
Yeah.
a dream.
I know. It was. Now, it is a very small publisher.
Mhm,
I can't say that everything's been, like smooth as a smooth sailing, not rocky between us or anything, but
mhm,
when you're not dealing with this giant staff and lots of any kind of back end marketing or that kind of thing. But I understand that's not really the case with most big traditional publishers too. So, but I really appreciated, and his name is Jonathan Bowden, and we have a great relationship. And what I really enjoyed was he knew what he was doing. He had been there before, and he made the book a much better book
mm.
because he knew how to. He knew editors. He knew wickets. He knew things. I didn't even know what an ISBN was.
ISBNs for those listening in are very important. And Ray Rakin in I think it's episode 3, Ray Rakin goes into details on ISBNs, but it's the identification number for your book. And it's
Right.
important that you buy them from Boker. So I go back to
Yeah.
Ray Rakin's episode and watch that. And
Right.
ISBNs are very important, right?
Right. So
So
I didn't know these things. I didn't know about front matter and back matter. I've been reading books my whole life, but these are things that really helped get me through all that. And he listened to me. The original cover, he wanted to have like a picture of a girl on the cover. I guess more of your standard what you'll see on a young adult novel,
mhm.
kind of think about like some of the series. But I was really against that. And I said, "Look, I want the readers to have in their own mind who this girl is. I don't want to present a picture of who she is."
Mhm.
And and he said, "Well," I said, "Look, I'm a girl, you're not." and uh, and so they went with me, and I was very happy. Like I said, I love that first cover. And another little tidbit about this cover is in the eye there is a small picture. It's like a person inside the horse's eye,
Oh,
and
cool.
that is my mother-in-law when she was 9 years old. It was an old black and white photo.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, and that was there before Twilight did it, by the way. So and it's sort of, I mean, so you sort of see the girl, and you see the girl in the silhouette down there, but
Mhm.
still, you can't really, it still lets the reader decide what it is that she looks like. So,
Yeah, and I agree with that. Like
mhm,
I would do silhouetted covers on all of my books because I want
yeah,
the character to live in the imagination of the reader. I don't want to
right,
dictate to them what the character should look like. So
right,
I agree with that. And then most importantly, you put a horse on the cover of your book. It's about horses, so the having a horse
right.
on the cover is very important too. So
Hmm.
So working with a small press, what I heard is they helped you with editors and copy editing, probably the internal formatting of the book, your
Oh
front
yeah.
matter and back matter, and cover design. And then
Right.
obviously they took care of distribution for you as well.
Right.
Just
Right.
focus on writing.
Right. 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 So that was very helpful. I am interested in self-publishing.
Mhm.
I I didn't talk about that. I did self-publish this book right here. It's called Teacher's Tack for Believing in Horses.
Oh, cool.
And I this was my brother I mentioned in the beginning he was a career educator. He still is. He teaches in China. And but he taught 4th and 5th grade for 17 years. And so he was perfect to have as a partner in this
Mm,
when I was writing this book because
mhm,
he'd say, "Oh, kids love to read this kind of stuff, or they love to hear this, or they love to hear funny voices, and they love to read them out loud." And he's very creative, and so he created this. He had these on. We had them online, and they are still are online on my website, the
mhm,
discussion guides and things
mhm.
to help teachers teach my book, my first book. And it even
Cool.
has a whole homeschool series that you can do an entire homeschool series with this book and exercises and puzzles and things to fill out and things to act. And so it's really very very clever. And we had them online, and we spoke together at a conference. It was a reading conference, and it was how a teacher and an author can really collaborate well to make a story that's very meaningful for for kids. And so they said, we want a book, we want a hard copy book, we don't want to have to go online." And then no, again, that was about 8 years ago, so things may have changed a little bit, but
Mm,
that's what they wanted. And so it's really been interesting. I've sold this book in Indonesia, of all places, believe it or not. I had some
wow.
educator come to me and say, "I really would love this book. I think I think it cost me $20 or something to send it there." But the point was, I was so excited that somebody uh, that far away cared about that book and wanted
Mhm.
to teach it to kids in the right way.
That's
So
so cool. And you created a companion piece to your books, which is,
mhm.
another revenue stream for
Right.
your books. And that's a
Hmm.
very creative way to do that
Yeah.
and share that
But,
information.
I again, I was kind of busy at the time, so my brother did this mostly on his own, and I just realized I'm not really good at all that formatting and all that kind of stuff.
Mm,
So,
mhm,
uh, it's what really that's why I never was too interested in the self-publishing realm. But as I'm getting a little more mature, I'm thinking, maybe it's time to
mhm.
learn a few new tricks.
Well, and what's so cool about this conversation is you have that option, right? A lot of authors these days are actually going the hybrid route where they're working with a traditional publisher or small press, and they also do independent publishing. So it's like a hybrid mix of all the different ways
Right.
to do that. And
Mhm.
and I will tell you, since you wrote your first book, and since even I wrote my first book, things have changed a lot, and
Yes.
and independent publishing is getting easier and better and faster all the time. And we don't have time to go into the deep dive, but give me
Mhm.
a holler, and we can chat, and I can share with you some of the tools that I use, particularly around formatting. That is,
Right.
it's so easy now. It's
Yeah.
like that, and it's
Yeah.
not something to be afraid of. You just have to do a bit of learning, and there's a bit of a curve. But once
Mhm.
you get around that, I mean, I'm still learning. There's
Right.
constantly learning and figuring things out. But like, that's what the point of this podcast is for too. It's like for authors, who love horses, to share ideas and share what's
Mhm.
working for them, and get inspiration from other authors, whether
Right.
they're traditional, hybrid, or independently published. Like, there's some value in there for everyone. So
Right. Right.
thank you so much for sharing all that. Now, given that we just talked about all of that, is there anything that you wish you had known when you first got into the business of being an author?
Mhm. A couple things. Yeah. One, I would say is I wish treated the books like a business from the beginning.
Mm,
So, and not because I wrote them to make money. It's just that you seem to take it a little more seriously, and the accounting and that kind of thing, and just keeping track of what you're doing and where you're spending your time.
mm,
That how much time are you spending on marketing? How much time are you spending on administration? How much time are you spending on writing? How much time are
mm,
you spending just goofing around reading emails? So looking at it as a business, and so I've actually incorporated my books into my business now.
Mm.
which is helpful. It's good for me. It all helps me with the accounting and that kind of thing. So I wish that. And the other thing is, I wish that there's a lot of people with a lot of advice out there and a lot of conflicting advice.
Mm.
And I really wish that I had just kind of really followed my own gut on a few things.
Mm.
I'll use my blog as an example. I started a blog in 2010. I didn't even know what a blog was. I
You
really
just
did.
jumped right in. That's
I
good. That's
really
good.
didn't. My friend, who's a great marketing person, she was a photographer, and she said, "Well, and of course you have to have a blog." And I was like, "Oh yeah, of course." It's a blog, you know. so, but I started as really a weblog. That's a weblog diary, like they first were, and I started going down my author journey, and this is what I did, and then I started going off in some other directions and looking at all these things. People said, "Oh, this is the 15 tips to a perfect blog post," and I'm like, okay, and I'm not doing any of them, and it just, and all that, and the thing is, everybody is not you.
Mhm.
And so I've gone, kind of full circle. Now my blog is sort of a place where I know that every month I only blog once a month because that's what works for me.
Mhm.
It's a place where I know I'm gonna create something. I'm
Mhm.
gonna do some kind of writing, and it's a great way to go back and look at like a snapshot in time of where you were at the time.
Mhm.
Where was your mind? Where was your writing? Where was your and a fun way to sort of document things that have happened. And so there's a lot of people who have great blogs out there and have millions of followers.
Mhm.
And I'm very happy, and I'm glad that's what works for them. But in the end, I think it's the same thing with your books and your writing, is to kind of settle into what works for you.
Great advice. Great advice, because it what works for you is not going to be what works for someone else, which is not going to
Right.
be right what works for somebody else. And where can you best spend your time creating something of value? And
Hmm.
so yeah, so once a month blog post works for you, and that's great. It's like, I
Yeah.
love that. That's good advice. Like, dive in, figure out what works for you, and then just keep with that rhythm. And you don't have to keep up with the Kardashians. You don't have to keep
Right,
up with,
right.
you
And
know.
if something isn't working, change it.
Mhm.
That's I think that's another piece of advice is,
Mhm.
and I've certainly done that with my business. That say, wait a minute, this is not what were my goals, right? What
Mhm.
were my
Mhm.
goals? And how is this getting me toward my goals? How did I get
Mhm.
sidetracked off my goals? And let's get back to them. And so, and making that shift more, it's about business if it is
Mhm.
business, and it's about time.
You mentioned your business a couple times, and I
Mhm,
want to I want to talk about that a little bit too,
mhm,
because it sounds like running your business has helped your book business
mhm.
in addition. So in 2014, you founded Veteran Writing Services LLC to provide writing services to business clients and encourage other veterans to write. So can you tell us a little bit about your business, the services you offer, and why you decided to start such a unique company?
I will. When I retired from the Navy, I was just going 2009. I was just going to go out, ride my horses, have fun, work out, volunteer a little. That was my plan. And then I had a call from a former boss who said, "Can you can you help me? I've got this project. I need to." And he's a retired admiral. I got this project, and I got all these people writing, and they're all engineers. And I heard you just wrote a kid's book. I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, that's what I need." He said, "I need someone in here with that skill set who can make this thing readable to like an
Mm.
eighth grade level." And I said, "Really? Okay. Well, yeah, I guess I could do that." I didn't know anything about it. And he was working for, it was a big defense contractor. And so I did. I went and I worked for him on this project. And then right after that, another friend of mine, another Navy friend of mine, she said, "Hey, let's go to this VWISE, which is Veteran Women Igniting the Spirit of Entrepreneurship program."
Ooh, cool.
Yeah, yeah, and it was very neat, and it was all about starting women veterans starting their own businesses, and very well run program out of Syracuse University. So we went to this. You did a 12-week online program, and it was all about starting your own business and coming up with a business plan, all this kind of. So I did that, and I had this great idea, and I was going to do this business all about helping veterans write. That was going to be what I was going to do. I was going to go there and I was going to teach classes and workshops, And I got there, had figured out my whole business plan. It was sort of a speed dating kind of thing that night
Mm.
where you could go around and talk to, I don't say speed networking is what I mean. So I went up, there was one guy sitting there, nobody was there. He happened to be the vice president of this whole program. And I sat down with him. I said, "Hi, here's my idea. Da, da, I've been thinking about it." He said, "Well, that's great, but that's not a business." Poof. And I said, "Oh my." So if you want to do it as the nonprofit, that's great. And,
Mhm.
but I was like, "Well, no, you kind of want to." So he talked me through it and kind of said, "Well, where have you made money writing before?" And I told him about it. I was actually writing proposal. I said, "Well, I've done this." He said, "Well, then good." He said, "Go out and do that, make that your business. And then you can still go to veterans and say, look, it's possible to make a living for writing. This is how I've done it.
Mm.
And that way you can, and then you can fold your books into it as part of it too, to say, look, here I'm a veteran. I've written books and gotten them published, and you can do the same thing." And so I said, "Oh, okay. Well, I'll do that." So I did, and I turned the business around. And but now I do actually have a couple clients that are former retired military that have written books that have asked me to help them with their books. I also do veteran writing workshops with the Military Writers Society of America. So
Mm.
we go to the VAs and hold workshops. It depends. We don't know if it could be 12 to 70 people when we get there, and just trying to get people to tell their stories, veterans to
Oh.
tell their stories. Well, it's not just veterans. It's veterans, military families, anybody who friends, anybody who has an interest in telling military related stories. Even in a one day workshop, the things you can do with these exercises, people will create this unbelievable piece of prose in 5 minutes in a 5 minute exercise.
Mm.
And they'll say, "But I just, I don't know how to write." And I say, "Yes, you do. This is beautiful. Just do it. Just write."
So it sounds like underneath the umbrella of your business, you do a lot of different kinds of work. So
Hmm.
you're coaching people around finishing book projects. You're
Hmm.
providing workshops that help veterans realize that they can
Hmm.
write and tell a story. You're also doing proposal work. Is that right?
Right, right. And that's the bulk of the work I do.
Hmm.
It's proposal work. I was an intelligence officer, like you said, and so
Hmm.
it's a lot like putting together a puzzle many times, because you're given some things that don't fit together, and you have to figure out how to make them fit together, and in very few words and in very little time. It's a market that there's a lot of work, particularly here in this DC area. For
Hmm.
most of the ones I do, they're bids for, it's like large defense contractors who are bidding on things for the government.
I
So
see.
they have to tell them, okay, hey, we want to build a new IT system, and so I'll work for a company and help them explain how they're going to build this thing and deliver it to them in the way that they want it, in the price, in the cost that they want it, and that kind of thing. So uh, it, it's funny because it sounds very dry. It doesn't sound very interesting, but every writing makes you a better writer.
Hmm.
And I I I was thrilled when I saw that. Oh, I'm going to forget her name right now. Water for Elephants, Flying
Oh,
Changes. So
Sarah Gruen.
Sarah Gruen, yes, she's
Yeah,
one of my favorite authors. I knew I'd do that, but
I love her work too. Her
I
books
do
are good.
too. Well, she's a technical writer.
Mhm.
And I read that at the back of Water for Elephants once, and it was in there as one of the Q&A. She says, "Yeah, I can learn how to pick up adjectives again really easily."
Yeah, I mean, there is something to be said for that because in
Yeah,
that sort of writing, you have to really strip down. Also, the same freelance writing or writing for the media or newspapers, you have to learn
right,
how to strip down your writing. And I
right.
imagine it's harder to strip down your writing than it is to put writing back in. So,
Yeah,
right, the more writing you do of all sorts of varieties, the better writing
right.
becomes. So that's
Absolutely. I originally said I was only going to be in business for 5 years. I just wanted to start it and do it, see if I could do it. By then, you've figured things out. You're not doing everything for the first time. You're not having to go out and get new clients and everything else. You hopefully have settled into a rhythm. So I decided I'd go ahead and do it, and I like it too. So
yeah.
I'm sticking with it.
Yeah, well, you built a business that works. Good,
Hmm.
like that's very awesome and
Yeah.
powerful and good on you. And you're your own boss. You probably
Hmm.
set your own hours. You decide which projects you want to take on,
Hmm.
and you're
Hmm.
I imagine working from home. So
Hmm. Most
there's a
most
lot
of the
of
time.
yeah,
Hmm.
there's a lot of freedom in that. So
Yes.
that's really wonderful and
Yeah.
congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I wanted to ask you, I mean, and you can answer this way, this whichever way you want. So, for you, what's been the hardest part about being an author or a businesswoman or an entrepreneur? And then on the flip side, what's been the best part of being an author or an entrepreneur? I'll let you answer whichever way you want. Is it author
Okay,
or entrepreneur?
I'll take the author. The hardest part for me, I don't think you'll be surprised, is when I say the marketing.
Mm,
So I know it's probably hard to believe, but I am actually a little shy. So it just is, and I think it has a lot to do with being an intelligence officer for a long time. That I'm just not used to getting out there and go, hey, look at me, look at me, look what I can do, and I'm so wonderful. And it just is not. I don't know. I'm very uncomfortable with it. I I do know how to do certain things, and that's why when I talked about connections, right? I much prefer to do that than to do the marketing. I mean, and I know, you're a wonderful marketer. There's great marketers out there, and I think it's just something that people have, and it's sort of like the horse DNA, right?
mhm,
It's just not something that comes easily to me. So that
mhm,
that would that to me is the hardest part.
mhm.
The uh, best part is when I'm back at the barn, let's say, and some little girl walks up to me and said, "Ah, you're the lady who wrote that book."
Oh.
And this has actually happened. It's
Mhm,
happened quite a bit, particularly around here.
mhm.
Or somebody will recognize me in a restaurant or something, and they'll say, they bring their kid over. That's the lady with the horses, and who wrote, and the positive feedback. It's just
Aw.
wonderful. Of course, as authors, we always want to say, can you leave a review?
Mhm.
But you just heard what I said about the marketing thing, so I have a hard time doing that. But I think that's just wonderful when you've touched somebody, and
Yeah.
particularly when you've touched somebody's emotions, or had them make a change. I have one little group well, actually two, do fundraisers for horse rescues because of my book.
Oh,
I mean, and these are just two I know of. That
yeah.
one was a group that used to meet back here, and they raised some money for one of the horse rescues, and another was with the schools. I did a Horses Rock book club.
Mhm. I love that.
It's so fun. It was because Senator Ed Riley's sent the books to the the librarian. The librarian picked up the book. She had it there. She knew she had kids who liked horses. She contacted me and said, "Hey, would you be interested in doing this? These girls would love to actually meet an author." I said, "Sure, I'll do it." And they ended up coming over to ride my horses. And anyhow, that kind of stuff is that good positive feedback it just goes a really long way. And they ended up doing a fundraiser, and we ended up buying a halter for one of the horses that had been a rescue back at the barn where I was, and we gave
Aw.
when they came over, we gave put the put the little pink halter on the mare for with the
Aw.
kids. And so that kind of stuff, I don't know, it's the kind of stuff that makes me smile.
Absolutely, and your words are making a difference. I mean, look at the ripples of goodness that you're sending out into the world in your
Yeah,
community, and it's only gonna go
yeah,
further than that. So,
yeah.
yeah, thank you for what
Thank
you're
you.
doing for humans and for horses. What
Yeah.
else? Where's Valerie heading next?
Um, well, I'm pretty sure that I've been I've been too busy really to keep writing books because I started this business. It's become very, very busy, so I just haven't really had the time. But I think I also just kind of needed a little break or something. I
Mhm.
don't know, but it's just really hit me hard recently. The creative vibe is kicked back in, and I have ideas for what I want to do with the rest of my books. I think it's time for Sadie to go out west.
Oh,
So
that's so cool. And see that,
yeah,
I mean, that's sort of, and it's okay to take a break, and
yeah.
it's like healthy. But I always
Hmm.
I always say, like, you gotta follow the muse when it shows up.
And I've lived out west too, so I I would like to tell that story too. And I kept saying this. I don't know why. It actually only really hit me about this week. I've always said, boy, if I had really been smart about this, she saves 10 horses. Each of the follow on books will be what happened to one of those horses. Well, why doesn't she go out west to check on one of these horses that went to a dude ranch, and then why doesn't she go here to check on this? So I, and working through different disciplines and so that's what I've come up with, and I've sort of sketched out what each of these
I
people are
love
going
that.
to do. And yeah, and two of the ponies went to one place together, so they'll be together in one book. But that would be the initial book, and then 9 more.
And it sounds like so many great things are bubbling up and, the creativity is rolling. And isn't it fun to be able to grab one of those ideas and grab one of those ideas and then bring it down to earth and invent
Yeah.
something out of that?
Hmm.
Well, Valerie, I so wish you success around what's next for you. And I've so enjoyed
Thank you.
having you on the show. Would you share with listeners where they can find you and your books online? As you know.
www.believinginhorses.com. And so that's my website, and the books are there. They are also on Amazon, and but you can buy them. You can get to the link from my website to
Mhm.
Amazon too. So you just Google "Believing in Horses." If you Google "Believing in Horses," you're going to find out. Even though I'm a terrible marketer, there's a ton of stuff out there.
You That's the thing. Like you're so hard on yourself, but you have a presence, everywhere,
Yeah,
and you've done a good
yeah,
job of honing the believing in horses for yourself, and you're
yeah.
the first thing that comes up. So well done,
Thank
my
you.
friend.
Yeah, it's legit longevity.
Longevity, absolutely. And I'll be sure to link to Valerie's social media channels and her website and all the places you can find her books in the show notes. And
Great.
I have so enjoyed our time together, Valerie, and
Thank you.
keep writing. I'm excited to see what you do next, and I'm sure we'll be running in the same circles not too far in the future.
Great. Thank you so much, Carly.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast. I hope you enjoy these Q&A sessions with wonderful equine authors who love all things horses and writing, just like me. Visit my website, carlykadecreative.com, where you can read the show notes, and make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you so much for your support. Want a free guide to secrets of horsebook authors? Gallop over to carlykadecreative.com/wisdom to have author advice delivered instantly to your inbox. If you are an author who writes about horses and would like to be spotlighted, please let me know. Visit my contact page at carlykadecreative.com to fill out a request. I'd be happy to have you on the show too. Thank you for tuning in to the Equestrian Author Spotlight podcast. See you next time. I'm your host, Carly Kade. Creative writing makes my spurs jingle.